2018, Cabinet reveals that scores of Barbudans are prepared to purchase their lands. Vandals hit All Saints Secondary School, leaving threatening messages in spray paint. Within the region, a search is launched in Caribbean waters after a boat carrying Venezuelans capsized. And the U.S. president extends sanctions for Iran one last time. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday edition. We will have a shortened version of our newscast this evening owing to some technical difficulties we're experiencing here. Thanks once again for joining us. I am Phil George. The Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda has revealed that at least 100 Barbudans have indicated their readiness to purchase plots of land on the sister isle. It comes on the heels of the recently passed Barbuda Land Management Amendment Bill 2017. According to Chief of Staff Lionel Max Hurst, over 100 Barbudans have indicated in writing their willingness to accept the offer. He also states that a request was made from a Barbudan to acquire a lease with the option to purchase the land on which he lost his hotel property during Hurricane Irma last year. The Chief of Staff also pointed out that more signed expressions of interests will be gathered by the time the Barbuda Land Amendment Act 2017 is gazetted and the date is published for its effective commencement. Prime Minister Gaston Brown, during his address to the nation on New Year's, indicated that the recently passed bill will unlock the economic potential of the island. The bill was this week approved in the upper house, the Senate. Barbudans would be given the opportunity to purchase the lands for $1. Well, the National Office of Disaster Services NODS has revealed that targets have been set for Barbudans to be repatriated to the sister isle. But Fillmore Mollin has chosen not to give insight, saying it was better not to make them known since plans are continuously being adjusted. However, the director of NODS noted that by mid-2018, they're expecting significant progress will be made in the rebuilding program. Barbudans will then be asked to return once the green light is given.
Once we have completed the rebuilding of Barbuda to the point where we are satisfied that Barbudans can move back, those who choose not to go back, that, as I understand it legally, is their right so to do. However, when we get to that point and people decide, look, I am not going back, then there will have to be a cut-off point at which they find employment and support themselves. As it stands now, it is the government responsibility to provide basic services. We will continue to do that. However, once we get to the point where Barbuda has been sufficiently rebuilt to the point where people can move back, we will then indicate that to Barbudans. Those who do not desire to go back will be invited to find employment, and so the services offered in Antigua will be discontinued.
Mr. Mollin revealed that materials will arrive shortly and he expects the workload to increase.
Just now we're going to have a severe injection in terms of material from the Chinese government through UNDP landed on Barbuda. Once that material is there, things are going to be moving at a very rapid pace. We will prioritize those homes that are fixed. And so as homes are fixed, at some point in time we're going to have incrementally people moving back to live in Barbuda.
That's the director of the National Office of Disaster Services NODS, Fillmore Mollin. Students of All Saints Secondary School were sent home early today after unknown vandals damaged sections of the school buildings. The perpetrators wrote threatening messages in spray paint on parts of the building, with some being directed to the school's principal. One message sprayed on the wall outlined that they knew where the principal lived. After using the spray paint, the perpetrators hurled a stone at a glass window, shattering it. That triggered an alarm. Police were reportedly patrolling the area when they heard the alarm and investigated sometime after 5 this morning. morning. It is being suggested that the vandals may have entered the property in the early hours of this morning. Classes were convened as normal today, but a decision was taken following a meeting for early dismissal. Education officials visited the school and met with teachers. Police investigations are continuing. No security guard was on the premises at the time of the incident. Well, the search continues this evening for two men wanted by the police for drug trafficking offences. Police are seeking the public's assistance in knowing the whereabouts of 36-year-old Jason Jermaine Reynolds and 36-year-old Shagon Sheldon O'Brien, both of Martins Village. Police reportedly visited the Martins Village home of the men on Wednesday to execute a search warrant. In the process, the two men fled from the home and have since gone into hiding. A quantity of cannabis and other prohibited items were found in the home and seized. Persons knowing the whereabouts of the two men are asked to contact the police. You can do so by calling the Criminal Investigations Department at 462-3913 or 462-3914. Police are also appealing to the two men to surrender at any police station on the island. Another large welcoming party is expected to greet Team Antigua when they row into Nelson's Dockyard tomorrow morning. The Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Rowing Challenge will end in Antigua, and the local team is expected to arrive in second position. They maintained first position for several days in the early stages of the competition, but eventually lost the lead owing to issues they encountered with their vessel along the way. On Thursday, Team Antigua reportedly covered 93 nautical miles in big wave conditions with average winds of over 20 knots. Their position this morning was 16.56 degrees north, 60.4 degrees west, and they were rowing at 3.6 knots. But those coordinates would change. The four oarsmen arriving are expected in Nelson's Dockyard this evening at around 9:30. Team Antigua will arrive tomorrow at around 9:30 in the morning and Swiss Emotion around 2.5 hours later. All teams left Spain shortly before Christmas. Organizers said the times are likely to change. And Team Antigua is rowing to raise funds for the Marine Park project for proper scuba and snorkel moorings, guided and labeled snorkel trails, coral farming, and a no-anchor zone for foraging turtles. And that's their plan. The park is expected to benefit all of Antigua economically and environmentally for generations to come as it becomes a major tourist attraction in the region. Part of the money raised by Team Antigua will also go towards assisting relief efforts in Barbuda. Meanwhile, organizers have issued an advisory for spectators. If persons are going out on a boat, the advisory is you should not go within 65 feet of the rowing boats, neither disturb the track with wake or throw or pass things to the rowers before they cross the finish line. Persons are also being advised to keep clear of the APSAR safety rib at all times, as well as the finish line, which will be positioned beneath Fort Berkeley. Breaching the advisory could lead to disqualification of the rowers. Well, that's a look at the national developments this Friday evening. As we earlier mentioned, a shortened version. We'll take a break and we'll tell you what's happening regionally and internationally. Stay tuned. The time is now 18 minutes on the hour of 7 o'clock evening time in Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. We thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening. A search has been launched in Caribbean waters after a boat filled with Venezuelans capsized near the Dutch island of Curacao. The Venezuelan authorities said a boat carrying 34 people has capsized, killing 4 people, and another 28 have been reported missing. Regional Civil Protection Director Jose Montano said the boat departed Venezuela for the Dutch Caribbean island on Tuesday. According to Reuters, police and relatives of the surviving passengers confirmed the boat had been trying to reach the city of Williamstead in Curacao, despite a travel ban imposed by the government of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. The incident comes amid heightened tensions after Maduro ordered a trade blockade with Curacao, Aruba, and Bonaire on Friday. Venezuelan authorities allege the smuggling of products out of Venezuela to neighboring countries is one of the causes of the severe shortage of food and other basic products that the South American country has been facing for several years. The Trinidad and Tobago government yesterday agreed to meet with opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bessecer on 2 critical pieces of legislation, the failed Anti-Gang Bill and the Anti-Terrorism Bill, to fight the criminal elements who have been creating mayhem and havoc in the country. In a January 10 letter to Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, Persad-Bessecer stated that based on the country's 494 murders for 2017, and with 23 killings so far in the last 10 days, she proposed that the government and opposition meet forthwith with a view of agreeing to a bipartisan legislative approach in the fight against crime and the criminal element. Minister in the office of the Prime Minister, Stuart Young, said it was the police who have been asking for anti-gang legislation, and it was a pity the bill failed after the opposition did not support it last month. He said the legislation was needed to help the police gather intelligence with regards to gangs and gang activity, which would be converted into evidence. He said with the government's support, the bill can return to Parliament in the shortest possible time. Young said seeing that the opposition had supported its presidential candidacy, Paula May Weeks, on Monday, it had given him hope that they will get the opposition's full backing on the anti-gang bill to deal with criminals. The Puerto Rico-based Seaborn Airlines is being sold to United States carrier Silver Airways. Seaborn, which operates flights across the Eastern Caribbean, is being sold because of financial strain caused by Hurricanes Irma and Maria. The airline says most of the countries serviced, including Puerto Rico, the British and United States Virgin Islands, Dominica and St. Martin, were significantly impacted by the Category 5 hurricanes. Acting CEO of Seaborn Airlines, Ben Monson, says while the company's business has enjoyed a remarkable recovery since the 2017 hurricanes, the financial stress caused during the recovery period, coupled with legacy liabilities, have made it necessary to seek reorganization protection. Seaborn said the airline's day-to-day operations will continue as normal and will not be disrupted by the sale. The company said it will also maintain its code-share partnerships that facilitate easy connections with other partner airlines. Although financial stress from the hurricanes encouraged the airline to sell, Seaborn had entered into negotiations with Silver Airways months ago. In news now on the international scene, United States President Donald Trump says he is extending sanctions relief for Iran one last time so Europe and the United States can fix the nuclear deal's terrible flaws. The waiver he will sign suspends U.S. sanctions on Iran for another 120 days. The White House wants a deal with European Union signatories to make restrictions on Iran's uranium enrichment permanent. Under the current deal, they are set to expire in the year 2025. Mr. Trump also wants Iran's ballistic missile program to be addressed. This is the last chance, the U.S. president said in a statement today. In the absence of such an agreement, the United States will not again waive sanctions in order to stay in the Iran nuclear deal. Also today, the U.S. imposed separate sanctions against 14 Iranian individuals and entities it accuses of rights abuses, censorship, and support for weapons proliferators. The U.S. still maintains sanctions on Iran independent of the nuclear deal on matters such as terrorism, human rights, and ballistic missile development. The landmark accord, known formally as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was signed between 6 global powers and Iran in 2015. It saw Iran agree to reduce uranium enrichment activity drastically, dispose of its enriched uranium stocks, and modify a heavy water facility so it could not produce material suitable for a nuclear bomb. In return, decades of international and U.S. nuclear-related sanctions were suspended, and the U.S. president must sign a waiver suspending them every 120 days. But Mr. Trump has repeatedly criticized the deal reached under his predecessor Barack Obama as the worst ever. Saudi Arabia has for the first time allowed women to spectate at a football match, part of an easing of strict rules on gender separation by the ultra-conservative Muslim country. Women fans filed into a stadium in the city of Jeddah on Friday through family gates into family seating. But even segregated as they were, their presence in the stadium marked a significant moment for the kingdom. It follows a series of reforms intended to modernize the country. Earlier on Friday, ahead of the football game, there was another small sign of change. The country's first car showroom dedicated to female customers was opened. For the first time, women will this June be allowed to get behind the wheel after it was announced in September that a ban on women drivers would be lifted. Women at the car showroom milled around inspecting vehicles that they will be allowed to take out on the road when the ban ends. The Saudi government said last week women would be allowed to attend a second match on Saturday, that's football match, and a third next Thursday. That's a look at developments from across the region and internationally. Stay tuned. The weather report for this evening and into the weekend is next. Well, we thank you so much for joining us on this Friday edition of Point FM's Nightly News. on behalf of all of us here at Pointe FM, we want to wish you a great evening and do have an enjoyable weekend. Just before we go, a recap of the headlines that made the news. Cabinet reveals that scores of Barbudans are prepared to purchase their lands. Vandals hit All Saints Secondary School, leaving threatening messages in spray paint on several buildings, forcing an early dismissal of classes. A search is launched in Caribbean waters after a boat carrying Venezuelans en route to Curacao capsized. And the U.S. president is extending sanctions relief for Iran one last time so Europe and the United States can fix the nuclear deals he described as terrible flaws. Once again, we thank you so much for joining us, those of you listening by radio, and a special thank you to those who have joined us on Facebook Live. I am Phil George. Do have a great evening. Goodbye.